Good morning, good evening, and good night. Hello fellow students, I am Terry and today's presentation is focusing on how my critical thinking, digital literacy and health literacy have changed over this semester and how these things can be used to view verbal and non-verbal communication within a future nursing scenario focusing on grief and loss. We will start by looking at identifying verbal and non-verbal communication within a scenario, followed by how grief and loss communication works, and finally how my critical thinking, digital literacy and health literacy have changed over this semester. Let's begin. Firstly, nurses need to be able to read the room. By this I mean they need a comprehensive understanding of both verbal and non-verbal communications. This is important because being able to see when someone is physically upset or distressed can give you the appropriate response. According to Keeley and Mensov, nonverbal cues are vital when it comes to establishing a relationship or even being able to identify one. Something as simple as two people who are sitting next to each other holding hands. This is a sign of a nonverbal cue of generally they are a couple. Looking at this scenario though, we have a 24-year-old Aboriginal woman with a possible miscarriage and she appears upset, which is to be expected. Now when writing a nursing note, this is a great place to read non-verbal cues from a fellow nurse. This nursing note is written in a linear style, which is letting us know the important things we need to know about the patient, such as age, gender, time of admittance, and who is here with the patient right now, and what has already been done to the patient. That saves us from doubling up on unnecessary tests and wasting time. It follows the legal requirements of writing a nursing note, which are the patient details in the top right hand corner with the UR number, then the date and time of the note being written on the left hand side, writing your name, your signature and your designation, and then drawing a line after you have completed your nursing note. When writing a nursing note, the generally used communication tool is the SOAPI tool, which stands for Subjective Data, Objective Data, Analysis, Plan, Implementation and Evaluation. The SOAPI tool uses information from the patient, the information we the nurse collect, what tests have been done, what our plan is, implementing that plan, and then reflecting on how effective the plan was and the things we can do to improve for the next time. When verbal and non-verbal communication is used, makes future encounters within a similar situation easier to deal with. Grief and loss is a topic that we as a society tend to avoid because no one enjoys talking about death, but sadly it is something we will experience throughout our lifetime. In this scenario we have a 24-year-old woman who has had a possible miscarriage. Now before we begin any tests we need to ask for consent, and if consent is given then we are allowed to continue. When caring for a patient there are customs and beliefs need to be kept in mind to ensure that there are no misunderstandings or inappropriate events occur within their culture. When caring for her physical and emotional needs, we need to include the family and friends who may have accompanied her to the hospital because this can be a stressful time for not only our patient but for her loved ones as well. Product states that the majority of female patients would prefer a female nurse. So as a male nurse caring for a female patient, it's possible that there are times where it may be inappropriate for me to perform certain care. So if a situation like this does arise, it's best to discuss it with your patient, asking them a simple question such as, do you mind if I perform your cares today, or would you rather I go and find a female nurse? If she says she would rather have a female nurse, this is completely okay and understandable, because it's just a part of her culture and her beliefs, or it's just possibly she's embarrassed to have her cares attended to by a male nurse. So we just need to be respectful of situations such as these. When caring for people of a different culture, we cannot assume that they have the same values and beliefs as we do when it comes towards grief and loss. The Australian Indigenous Health InfoNet states Aboriginal communities have different ways to deal with grief and loss. In some cases, the name of a lost loved one can no longer be said. Being aware of things such as this can help us to better comfort and console those we not only care for on a day-to-day basis, but we also need to be able to look out for ourselves and consider our own needs. We need to know when it's okay to be able to talk to either a family member, a friend, or even a close work colleague, just to be able to debrief on a situation that may have occurred at work. Doing this just helps us to have a better understanding of what has occurred, and it will also help us to be better mentally fit for the following shift. Reflecting back on my first semester at USQ, looking at critical thinking, digital literacy, and health literacy, I can say I've learnt quite a lot. Critical thinking is a key part of being a nurse. Being able to think quickly on the job can be a day-to-day task. Being able to quickly read the room and see how a patient is feeling, and being able to understand the non-verbal cues and being able to then interpret them makes the job a lot easier. Being able to critically think under pressure is something most nurses face day to day, so learning these foundations for being able to do this is going to help me on my way to becoming a registered nurse. Looking into digital literacy was a bit different, considering I've never used a group forum before to ask questions to my lecturers and tutors, and also to complete the weekly homework assignments. The use of the library's database and the e-library made writing assessments a lot easier, and being able to quickly research a topic to help justify my arguments was just at my fingertips. This was great to use. It has also taught me to think before I post something online, because once it's online it is there forever and the backlash can be detrimental. Health literacy has been a great influence. Since I already work in the aged care industry, I now have more of an understanding of what a registered nurses are actually talking about at work. And so in understanding what they talk about, I'm able to provide better care to the residents I look after. It is good to now have a better understanding of how the body functions and how everything works in harmony to keep the body going. To sum up, my critical thinking, digital literacy and health literacy have changed over this semester, and how these things can be used to view verbal and non-verbal communication within a future nursing scenario focusing on grief and loss. By being able to interpret verbal and non-verbal cues, this is an important part of being a nurse, and being able to show these in a nursing note is just as important. This goes hand in hand with being open to how people grieve and deal with loss, being able to read a non-verbal cue for something that lets you know how best to approach them. So being able to recognise all of these from learning things such as critical thinking, being able to use digital literacy, and understanding health, and how to treat people are all vital things a good nurse needs to understand. Thank you.